Hi, everyone. Mike White here. Welcome to this week's blog post. It's amazing. Here we are, first full week of September, one of my favorite times of the year. So many different ways that we can channel and funnel opportunities ahead of us. It does take some foresight, it does take some planning, but the reality of how this market is shaping up for all of us, there is a lot to be able to deal with, a lot that we can cover, and a lot of different directions you can go to generate significant opportunities to really build a good head of steam into the fourth quarter of this year and finish this year really strong and carry that momentum over into the beginning of 2025. So let's get started this week. And I've titled this conversation Accountants, Refis, Pre-Approvals, Oh My, because there are just so many opportunities here in the first week of September that we really need to be paying attention and to focus on what those opportunities are and making sure we're having a plan, because before you know it, these opportunities are going to disappear, and that ability to generate this initial momentum can be lost. And for those people who don't have that plan, they're going to find themselves in the middle of November sitting around with a lot of crickets going on, hoping that they can find a few deals to get closed before the end of the year. And that's just the shame. So we've got to start this thing out. And while there's a lot to cover, we've got to start with the accountants. And by now you have that entire list of accountants that you've worked with in the past. And now is the time to pull out that list and start those conversations with those accountants, because they're going to be addressing their clients who dealt with tax extension filings. And that part of the market is really important to get out in front of. Those are the people who are generally going to be the higher net worth borrower, buying the more expensive properties, taking the larger loans, who are going to need more care and more planning when it comes to how they're dealing with their money and why. And those opportunities, especially with accountants, are now expanded dramatically, because those accountants are going to be looking at their fourth quarters as well and having conversations and asking questions about a declining rate market. And so if you're not out there in front of it early, you stand to miss a huge opportunity. So accountants is extremely important. And again, first week of September, it's the time to start making those calls, because those tax extensions are due in the middle of October. Next, we have to really take a look at the declining rate market and realize rates are not as low as they're likely to go. While they're lower than they have been, and clearly plenty of people can benefit from the rate market as it stands now, without a proper plan on how you're going to look at this, you may just set yourself up to chase away opportunities rather than go out there and create them. So you've got to take some time. You've got to set up your, what I like to call, buckets of benefit, so that you have a prepared list to call, so that when the interest rate market gets to a certain number, you can just pull out that list. And here is the list of people who benefit by a refinance or should benefit from a refinance at this rate or at that rate or the other rate. And that way you have them already grouped. You already know at what point it starts making sense for them to start pulling the trigger. You've already got the information prepared. You can already run the numbers, because we have to understand that we need to be able to pick up the phone, make that call, share the benefit, and pull the trigger. And again, it has to be done quickly, and it has to be done by phone. Never are we going to send out an email blast. We're not going to go out there and tout these things on social media. I don't even want you sending text messages. I want you to pick up the phone and understand that the critical piece of this is preparation. You already know all the answers. You already know what the benefits are. You already know how you can get into this transaction, have them accept the opportunity, get the paperwork signed, trigger pulled, close this thing in 10 days to 2 weeks, and beyond, go on to the next deal, because the situation is not going to be your friend. We all know that the credit reporting agencies are all out selling information. The second that hard pull goes through, 100 mortgage people in your area are going to get notified, even across the country. I can't tell you how many, refinance sweatshops, if you will, are being set up. Doesn't matter where you are. If they're licensed in the state that you do business, they're probably going to get that, and they're going to start hounding your people. And if you're not prepared and you don't have the situation underway, you only run the risk of losing the opportunity because you weren't ready to go. The next thing that we've got to really pay attention to are our pre-approval updates. And again, pre-approvals are always important to stay in front of. We always have to let our pre-approvals know that we're paying attention to them and keeping them aware of what's going on in the marketplace. And part of our job during those pre-approval follow-up calls is to make them aware of their new purchasing power, how their payment that they've been approved for now gets them more money than it did just a few weeks ago. It's really important that they know that in addition to making sure that they're improving their credit scores and saving money and doing all the other things that we have them doing while they're out looking for that house, it's really important that you're prepared to let them know that maybe the dollar amount that corresponds to that payment can be, a few thousand to tens of thousands of dollars more, depending on the price range that they're looking. And that's really important that you have that, because again, while interest rates may be going lower and likely will trend to go lower into the future, the one thing that's not likely to go lower right now is the cost of that house. And so we're going to see a lot of people who are going to get information because people are going to be touting interest rates are going lower, interest rates are going lower. The problem with that is the home prices aren't going lower. And it's much more likely that they're never going to be able to make up the difference, regardless of how far interest rates go down. So getting in and making that house purchase now and owning that house always allows them for the opportunity down the road, should interest rates continue to improve, they can refinance later. Just because you bought a house and, now doesn't mean that you're stuck with that rate for 30 years. We all know that they can refinance. But that house, once they own it, they own it. And that is the one thing that often doesn't line up for people, is they try to thread the needle and say, well, there's going to be, housing prices are going to back off, or there's going to be a housing. But we've heard this talk about prices backing off or a housing bubble. We've heard it for years. Has it happened? Would you have liked to have 2021 prices now? Because for the poor person that didn't buy that house in 2021 or 2022 or 2023, I bet you they'd love to be able to have those prices today. And so locking in the price of that house, you can always refinance the house later down the road. So it's important to make those calls. And by the way, don't be afraid to go back deeper into your pre-approvals, people that may have given up, people that from a year ago or whatever who told you that they were going to take a break, that they needed some time to revisit the market. In many markets, inventories are a little better than they were in the past. And now that rates are more favorable than they were, that may be a time to reach out to them by phone and have that conversation, and maybe bring them back into the conversation and potentially help them get into that new house that they didn't think they were able to do. Now, the other thing I want to be able to deal with, again, it's always critical. We know today we're going to deal with continuing claims, initial jobless claims, and Friday we're going to have the August jobs report. Clearly, these things that can be market movers. Clearly, the markets are going to respond to these numbers. We've had a lot of conversations about this in the past. The markets are going to come to the realization that we've had for quite some time. And it's really important that we understand where volatility may lie. And while the trend may be lower in interest rates, blips on the radar, individual pieces of news or information or pressure on certain markets can cause the interest rate market to bounce around quite a bit. We've all been through that before. So it's important that you're paying attention, because here we are in what is, to me, the most critical 90-day block of the year. And it's either fully begun by you or it's about to begin by you, depending upon when the kids went back to school. But the reality of it is we're a month away from our annual business planning events. And that's really important because we start that in October for a reason. We do it in October, we schedule it, we get the schedule worked out, we make the changes we need to make, we implement the things we want to implement. Why? Because we want to hit the ground running in 2025 with a full head of steam. And that only can happen if we slowly prepare and get ourselves transitioned from what was to what will be. And clearly, if you have questions or comments, or you'd like to talk to me about possible a business planning event for either you, your team, your branch, your company, whatever, I'm very limited to number of, the amount of availability I have. I'm only one person, so I can only be in, so many places at a time. But, this is something that we should talk about and figure out what your needs may be, either as an individual or as a branch or a company, and figure out if there's something that we can do and how I might be able to help you get the planning that's necessary to help you move from where we are to where you will be in 2025. As always, it's Mike at imtcoaching.com, and we'll talk to you again next week. Take care.